You think your coworkers have your back. You think that helpful teammate is genuinely supportive. You think office politics are just part of the game. Here's the brutal truth that's going to shatter your professional worldview. The most dangerous people in your workplace aren't your obvious competitors. They're the charming colleagues, the supportive teammates, the mentors who seem invested in your success. And every single day, they're using 7 specific dark psychology tactics to destroy your career while making you think you're the problem. Studies show workplace manipulators don't attack randomly. They use calculated strategies designed to climb over your dead career while making you grateful for the opportunity to be their stepping stone. Harvard Business School identified these exact patterns. Organizational psychologists call them corporate predators. And today I'm exposing the 7 dark psychology tactics they use to steal credit, destroy reputations, and position themselves for promotions while you're left wondering why your hard work never gets recognized. When you start seeing these patterns, you're going to realize some people in your office have been systematically sabotaging your professional reputation for months or even years. Good. That means you're finally ready to stop being everyone's favorite workplace doormat. Tactic 1, credit theft disguised as collaboration. You know that project you spent weeks perfecting? Watch how smoothly they position themselves as the visionary leader, while you become the helpful team member who executed their brilliant strategy. Listen to their language in meetings. We developed this approach. Our team created this solution. I guided the process that led to these results. Your individual contributions become team efforts they can claim ownership of, while their minimal input becomes strategic leadership that deserves recognition. Here's what's actually happening. They're systematically documenting your work as collaborative efforts they supervised, creating a paper trail that positions them as the architect of your achievements. Every email they send about our progress is evidence they can use later to claim your success as their leadership victory. One client described spending weeks perfecting a client presentation. In the meeting, her manager said, "I developed this approach with my team's help." She became the helpful executor. He got the promotion, but credit theft is just their opening move. Tactic 2 reveals how they poison your professional reputation. Tactic 2, reputation assassination through concern. They spread subtle doubts about your competence through carefully crafted conversations with key decision makers. They never directly attack you. Instead, they plant seeds of concern disguised as helpful observations. I'm a little worried about Sarah's bandwidth. I noticed some inconsistencies in John's approach. I want to make sure we're supporting Mike through this challenging period. They frame their character assassination as constructive feedback or legitimate workplace concern. You probably won't even know it's happening until you notice people treating you differently. Suddenly, you're not invited to important meetings. Your ideas get dismissed more quickly. Your manager starts micromanaging tasks you used to handle independently. Here's the trap. When you try to defend yourself, you look paranoid and defensive. When someone says, "I heard you're struggling with the Johnson account," you can't prove they started that rumor. You become the person who's difficult to work with simply by trying to protect your reputation. Their reputation destruction leads directly to Tactic 3. Tactic 3, strategic incompetence. They consistently underdeliver on shared projects, forcing you to do extra work while they take equal credit for final results. They miss deadlines, provide subpar work, or simply forget critical tasks. But here's the genius part. They do it in ways that make project failure everyone's problem, not just theirs. So your conscientiousness kicks in. You pick up their slack to avoid project failure, working nights and weekends to compensate for their deliberate negligence. Then when the project succeeds, they position themselves as the strategic thinker who delegated effectively, while you become the detail-oriented executor who handled implementation. I watched someone systematically underperform on every collaborative project for 6 months, forcing teammates to compensate. When promotion time came, they were praised for their ability to bring out the best in their team. The people who actually did the work were commended for being reliable contributors. That's not teamwork. That's professional parasitism. Once they've established this dynamic, they deploy Tactic 4. Tactic 4, strength exploitation. They identify your key skills and systematically overload you with work in those areas while positioning themselves as the big picture strategist who handles more important responsibilities. You're excellent at data analysis. Suddenly, every project needs your analytical expertise. You're great with difficult clients. You become the go-to person for all challenging accounts. You're skilled at training. Congratulations, you're now the unofficial onboarding coordinator. While you're buried in technical work, they're building relationships with executives, attending strategic meetings, and positioning themselves as leadership material. Your competence becomes a trap that keeps you valuable but not promotable. They'll even complement this process. You're so good at this. I don't know what we'd do without your expertise. They're not recognizing your value. They're defining your limitations. You become the indispensable specialist who's too valuable in your current role to be promoted out of it. But Tactic 5 targets your emotions directly. Tactic 5, emotional manipulation. They use guilt, fear, and false urgency to make you work longer hours and sacrifice personal boundaries for their professional benefit. I know it's last minute, but the client is expecting this tomorrow. I hate to ask, but you're the only one who can handle this properly. I wouldn't normally request this, but It's really important for the team. Here's what they're actually doing. They're training you to see their poor planning as your emergency. Their lack of boundaries becomes your responsibility to compensate for. You start working late regularly, checking emails on weekends, canceling personal plans for urgent projects that somehow always emerge at the last minute. Meanwhile, they maintain perfect work-life balance while you burn yourself out covering for their strategic incompetence. Their emotional manipulation creates the perfect setup for Tactic 6. Tactic 6: Alliance disruption. They create conflicts between team members and position themselves as the neutral mediator everyone depends on for accurate information. They tell you that Sarah complained about your communication style. They mention to Mike that you seemed frustrated with his contribution. They share with the manager that there's some tension in the team they're trying to help resolve. None of these conversations actually happen the way they describe them, but now everyone's slightly suspicious of everyone else. By controlling information flow, they make themselves indispensable while preventing you from forming strong working relationships with colleagues who might support you. You become isolated in a workplace where you can't trust your own experiences because their version of events always sounds more reasonable than your growing suspicions. But Tactic 7 is the most career-destroying. Tactic 7: Strategic scapegoating. When projects fail or problems arise, they systematically shift blame to you while positioning themselves as the solution to the crisis they helped create. Here's how it works. They've already planted seeds of doubt about your competence through months of reputation damage. They've documented your work as collaborative efforts they supervised. So when something goes wrong, you're the obvious target. I tried to provide guidance, but the implementation didn't follow the strategy. I raised concerns about this approach, but the team felt confident in their direction. They become the wise leader who saw problems coming, while you become the incompetent executor who failed to deliver. The most insidious part is that they often create the conditions for failure through their strategic incompetence and then blame you for not compensating adequately for their deliberate sabotage. Now that you recognize these 7 tactics, here's how to protect yourself. The most effective strategy is professional gray rock, being competent but not exceptional in their presence while building relationships they can't control. Share minimal information about your projects with them. Respond to manipulation with process questions instead of emotions. What's the timeline? Who's the decision maker? Can you send that in writing? Document every interaction in ways they can't access. Most importantly, build direct relationships with stakeholders and decision makers that bypass their information control. When someone says, "I heard you're struggling," respond with, "Let me schedule time to discuss my actual performance on that project." Here's what's going to happen when you start protecting yourself. They're going to escalate initially. They might try to isolate you further or become more direct in their sabotage. This is their extinction burst, the final desperate attempt to regain control over your career. Some colleagues will be confused when you stop being their go-to person for extra work and professional sacrifice. When you suddenly start acting like someone who values their own career, they're going to push back. Good. That means you're finally developing professional self-respect. The colleagues who truly value your contributions will respect your new boundaries, but the people who only valued you for what you provided, they're going to hate your transformation. Here's the most important insight. These 7 tactics form a systematic approach to career destruction that most people never recognize until it's too late. They're not just competitive colleagues. They're operating with a fundamentally different approach to professional relationships. While you're trying to succeed through competence and collaboration, they're succeeding through manipulation and exploitation. They don't target you because you're weak. They target you because you have something they want: skills, relationships, or simply the work ethic to compensate for their strategic laziness. Professional awareness is your strongest protection. By recognizing these patterns early, you can avoid becoming deeply entangled with someone who sees your career as their personal resource to exploit. The most reliable protection isn't becoming less collaborative with everyone. It's becoming more strategic about who deserves your professional trust and energy. Document everything, build independent relationships, and prioritize your career development over their approval. If this video opened your eyes to patterns destroying your professional life, hit subscribe and comment about which tactic you've encountered most often. Your insight might help someone else reclaim their career and power. Remember, your career matters just as much as theirs. Stop sacrificing your professional future for people who see your success as their stepping stone.